Hey everyone, it's April 22nd, 2018, and this is your episode 142 of Percussion. I'm your host, Casey Cangelosi, and with me as usual are Laurel Black.
Hi.
And Megan Arns.
Hello.
Ben, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, doing well. How are you?
Fine, thanks. It's Ben Charles, everyone. Our guest today works under the name Gongtopia. He has presented concerts of original compositions and improvisations played on metal instruments, sounding bass drum and hand drums since 2002. He also regularly presents both gong meditation sessions and sound workshops using gongs, singing bowls, and bells. His website is www.gongtopia.com. And you guys, he has a staggering, and I know this because I counted, 63 CDs posted on the website, and you can listen to and purchase all of those there on his website. I counted, Michael. It's 63.
I lost count, so I'll take your word for it.
It's true. I counted 60, and that's not including the new one you're going to tell us about. So hello and welcome to Michael Bettine. How are you?
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for joining us. You know, our introduction to you, of course, through Laurel. She's the one who picked you up as a guest for us. And 2 episodes ago, I guess, we talked about this really cool news item that you had on your blog about the Puccini gongs.
Right.
And we talked about it as much as we could, but I was wondering if you could just kind of tell us the whole story, because I found it was really interesting.
Well, I've been following that for a few years since, I should have written his name down, the gentleman from the opera who owned the gongs, since he died. Then I saw an article in the New York Times, I believe it was, about him and the Puccini gongs, and a photo. And I started following it, and then it came up on this TV show, this kind of, they look at antiques and old things and value in that on this TV show, and somebody told me, hey, they're going to have the Puccini gongs on. So I checked it out, and then I put it on Facebook, and then everybody joined in the conversation, and then I put it on my blog, and more people joined in, and it just, that the set of gongs was commissioned by Puccini himself for Turandot, and apparently he never got to hear them because he died before finishing it. But these are the official, quote-unquote, official Turandot gongs. And then the guy died from the opera company, and his widow was renting them out and all. Now she wants to sell them for an insane amount of money.
Yeah, what do you think about that amount of money? We had a lot of fun talking about just the worth.
Yeah, I listened to your, to that episode. Well, a couple of things. I think there's a lot of sentimental value in that, because, that was kind of her husband's pride and joy that he had the Puccini gongs, and she'd like to see them continue to be used. And also because Puccini never finished Turandot, and apparently there's something like 20 versions of the ending written by different people, and she wants to commission a new ending that features more percussion that her husband never got to play, with a lot of percussion. And the only thing I can see, she's asking, $2 million, I think it is some old rich opera patron who's got oodles of money and, nothing to do with it, might say, hey, I love opera and I love Turandot so much, here's $2 million. Right. And I think that's sort of who she's appealing to. I don't really think she's appealing to the general public. If somebody says, oh, these Puccini gongs, I'm going to buy them because they're collectible. I think it's more appealing to hopefully some opera fan who would, some rich New York widow like her or something, would say, hey, I got all this money, what the heck, and I love Puccini. Let's buy these and save them for history. But nowhere actual value worth that.
I think Megan made that exact point. Maybe she's holding out for the right person, just the particular person who's that excited about it.
Yeah, that's probably it. But, and then all kinds of people chimed in about, how they're really not that great at sounding gongs. And I've played some of those types before. And, yeah, they're okay. But I think really good Thai gongs or the dream tuned gongs sound much better than those.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So can you tell us just a little bit about about just what you do, Michael, what Gongtopia is? As I think a lot of our listeners might not know.
Well, yeah, I've done all kinds of stuff. I started playing progressive rock, and I played jazz, and I played pop. I played everything. And I got just sort of tired of playing drum set. And, well, it started way back in the 70s playing progressive rock. I bought a bunch of gongs because you had to have gongs, and I bought bells and chimes, and I built this huge rack. And I just kept playing gongs and buying more gongs, and I just noticed these are really cool. I love playing bells. I love playing gongs. And then about 2000, I just decided, well, this is really what I want to do. So I kind of put together this idea of just playing metal music. And part of it was in a reaction to, if we're playing drums or most percussion instruments, they're extremely short sounds. Even if we play a marimba or snare drum, just about everything is a very short sound. And a lot of sounds are mainly attack. If you think like a snare drum or a wood block or something, they're very short sounds. And then when I got into the world of gongs and bells and singing bowls, these are very long ringing sounds. Some of them go for minutes. And that just became a whole fascinating thing to me, was working with longer sounds and also working with the space between each note. Because I played like in marching band and drum corps, and you're playing like a million snare drum notes, within a very short period of time. There's no space between them. Where here, I might hit something and it'll be, 20 seconds, 30 seconds or more before I created another sound.
Yeah, sure. What do you got there, Megan?
Well, I have a zillion questions for you, but I guess my first one is, where do you keep these gongs? Do you have a studio space? Are they in your basement? Do you have a special van to transport them when you go do, all these sessions that you do? Or what is your life like logistically?
Well, it's not that bad, because gongs, I pull up to a place and everybody thinks I'll have a huge U-Haul truck and all these big flight cases, but I just have a minivan. Mm-hmm. And the gongs, they all stack inside each other.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Different sizes. So like in the big gongs, I usually have 2 or 3 in each case. And the small gongs, I can get a lot of them in a, like a standard trap case size case. The only real problem is the weight of all the metal. Like I've got some small cases that I put all the bell plates and Burma bells in, and it'll be a real small case, but it'll be 40, 50 pounds. Just because it's all bronze. And yeah, I just keep everything. I have a basement studio, which is where I am right now, and I keep everything down here. I've got a lot of my stuff on racks, and then I've got some storage racks that I keep all the other gongs in.
Very awesome. Is there a preferred method of hanging that you enjoy? I feel like I went through a lot of research last year trying to hang gongs for a Haas piece. Mm-hmm. We had to, hang those really large octave 1 tie gongs. And so I did a lot of kind of research trying to figure out what to do. I ended up using speed rail and like metal clamps, like hose clamps.
Sure. Oh, a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have like 3 different methods I use depending on the exact instrument and the type of stand it's going on. And I use mostly Gibraltar hardware.
Okay.
Your standard drum set racking tube hardware. I've probably got 150, 200 feet of that because I have duplicate racks, so I can leave one set up and one that's my travel rack.
Yeah.
And I use that stuff, and it works out really well. And I kind of devised a hook system. On my website, I show how to do that, my sort of hook system, which I like better than Gibraltar's. But I'll do that, and I'll do other ways with like a metal S hook, and wrap it around and hook it onto the cord itself on some gongs, or like the bell plates in small hanging things like the Burma bells behind me here. I'll have those on hooks, but some of the other bells I'll just have hanging around the pipe itself.
Okay.
Yeah, what do you got, Ben?
Well, when you started talking about playing progressive rock, it just like a light bulb went off in my head, because one of my favorite drummers, if not my favorite drummer, is John Bonham from Led Zeppelin, who, if you know anything about the sort of iconic John Bonham drum set, he always had this gigantic, I looked it up, 38-inch Paiste gong behind him, which would often be lit on fire, which I don't know if that changes the sound at all, but it looks really cool when he starts hitting this gong that's on fire. But actually, I just Googled John Bonham gong, and to follow up our Puccini topic, actually it looks like in 2009, that gong went up for sale and was originally priced at $120,000, which I think John Bonham's gong is way cooler than Puccini's set of crappy-sounding gongs. And apparently it did not actually fetch that price at the auction, and it looks like in sort of an after the auction they tried to sell it for a lower price, and the final going price was $64,660 for that, like I said, 38-inch. Actually, it looks like this one might be 29 3/4 inch diameter John Bonham gong. And it says that Bonham's use of the gong was inspired by Carmine Appice, drummer for Vanilla Fudge, whom Led Zeppelin supported during their first U.S. concerts in December 1968. But yeah, there's a iconic rock legend gong for you.
Isn't that Carmine Appice, Ben?
Yeah.
Yes, Carmine Appice, right. Yeah, he and Bonham toured together, and that's where Bonham got his Ludwig and Paiste endorsement, because Carmine was a longtime Ludwig and Paiste player. And they both had pretty similar style of drumming, just that big sort of boomy kind of thing. But yeah, that's probably the most famous rock gong, is the Bonham one.
And Michael, do you ever light your gongs on fire?
No. Actually, I've known some people who light the stand on fire, which is better than actually lighting the gong on fire. But no, it's not too good for the gongs.
Who knew?
Right.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Well, I wanted to ask Michael, as someone who also blogs, but admittedly can't do it as regularly as you can, I'm very impressed. Everyone listening. So Michael keeps 3 blogs regularly. That's correct, right?
Right.
Yeah, so you have the Percussion Deconstruction blog, which is looking at percussion through a radical eye, shaking off the cliches of our instruments, and seeking the danger with all things. And you also have The Way of the Gong, which is where the Puccini story came through. That's where I found it. And then you have a third one called Art as a Spiritual Practice, an exploration of the intersection of art and life. And I just saw there that your most recent post, you mentioned the book, The Artist's Way, which I just wanted to say is one of my most favorite things that's ever been made, ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's come up on this podcast.
Yeah.
Laurel, of course, presented on it probably well over a year ago now, but other guests have brought it up several times.
Yeah, I got that one right after it came out, and I saw Julia Cameron at a book signing in Chicago, and it was really great. And yeah, that book was important for me just to kind of inspire my creativity, especially going into this whole sort of percussion thing. I think it had a big effect on that. But it's a classic book for anybody in any sort of art to really kind of help you, kickstart it and keep you on the path.
Michael, did I see you in the Memphis Gong Chamber online?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, Paiste had me go there. They had a big grand opening ceremony. I'm a Paiste artist, so they flew me down there, and I did the grand opening ceremony in a performance in that. And it was really exciting. It was fun, especially playing on all those big gongs that they have. Because they have like a 80-inch, but it actually measures out to 84-inch. And they have a 60-inch earth gong and a 60-inch, I think it was a microphone gong, the Stockhausen gong. Yeah. And then plus they've got rooms full of just about anything you'd want. So it was a nice playground to be in.
I just think it's so cool that they, would dedicate such a big space when they're a shop.
I think. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Jim Pettit, the owner, he's kind of a gong aficionado, so he's really into it, and he's got within the store, he's got these couple of really big rooms that are just decked out with gongs, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
But back to you were talking about blogging, and it's like, yeah, I'm kind of crazy because I have 3 blogs now, and I try to keep a schedule, do them weekly, which isn't always the easiest thing. But the other part of my career, besides being a musician, I've been a writer for as long as I can remember. And I for like 25 years or so, I wrote for Modern Drummer magazine. I've written for Downbeat. I've written for a lot of different music magazines. I've got some books out there and things like that. So the writing side is to me is just as important as the music side. And then when blogging sort of happened, it seemed a natural thing to do. And I started blogging probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so. And then it kind of grew from there into my 3 present blogs that I have.
You had one post that I liked so much called "The Selling of Gongs as Snake Oil," and I wonder if you would explain that for us.
Well, that's a deep one there.
Yeah, I like this one.
Yeah, okay. Well, I do a lot of work with meditation, with gongs and bowls and bells, and there's just a lot of BS behind that with people who do it. And so I'm not afraid to call them out on it, because I approach it from a trained percussionist aspect. And most of the people who play gongs never had a percussion lesson in their life, because the gong's easy. You hit it and you get a nice sound. It's hard to get a bad sound, per se, out of the gong. And there's just a lot of woo-woo, voodoo, new age stuff that people are trying to peddle out there, along with gongs and singing bowls, the sort of the snake oil thing, and a lot of claims are being made too that I don't particularly take to. So that's sort of where that came from. But yeah, I'm not afraid to write about it and say, hey, this is not real, what you're saying. Yeah.
I wanted to hear you say that because many episodes ago, Megan talked about a sound bath, and I tried to do some research on kind of the thinking behind it. And I think of course it's like ancient Eastern medicine thinking. So it's kind of cool to know the history, of course, of the instruments that we're playing. But yeah, I said, of course, the same thing. It's like, no, there's no such thing as your meridians that get realigned, and there's no pitch for your chakras. And no, sorry, I just, it's good to hear an expert say agree with that. The problem
is a lot of people are, if you look at something like the chakra systems and all these Asian and Indian things, they're thousands of years old. And then we have modern Western people trying to put modern Western ideas on top and and make it fit, sort of trying to make the square peg really fit in the round hole. And they'll do anything they can sometimes to try to make these claims and substantiate them. Or like the big one is this 432 hertz is the ideal pitch to tune everything to, and that there's been a conspiracy with the Nazis and all these people to have 440 be a concert pitch, because and that's damaging all of us, because it's and I've written about that a couple times, because that's just like,
that's wild.
It is, and it's unfortunately there's a lot of this out there in sort of the meditation sound healing community. And I think, again, a lot of it is because these people have no musical training whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so they don't know about, how 440 was set as a standard not that long ago, but now most things are 442. And even throughout history, the pitch standard has changed, and often it varied from composer to composer depending who they were writing for. They might have been writing like an opera. They might have been writing for a certain singer, and they would find the right A note for this singer. So it's been movable, throughout the past 300-400 years. It's moved around, and there is no conspiracy behind 440 and 432. Even then, it's like 432 can vary depending on what it is, what you're playing and all that. So that there's no ideal tuning. Same thing with all these planet tunings, tuning the gongs and things to the planets. I think that's a lot of imagination.
But is
and I get a lot
flat?
of people. Yeah, I think I get a lot of people who send me nasty messages because I don't believe in that. And I play planet
it's really
gongs.
cool to see. It's really cool to see someone successfully doing it with, frankly, without making stuff up.
Yeah.
I try not to. Again, as a trained percussionist, I think I see all this much more in a pragmatic manner than some sort of a new age woo-woo sort of manner.
Yeah.
And everything I do, I approach as a percussionist first. And if there's some sort of benefit out of that, that's just a byproduct of it. That's not my first, thing.
Yeah. Well, my experience in a sound bath, I feel like is exactly how you're describing, because as a percussionist, of course, and just as a musician, I can't help but analyze the sound. And, I'm thinking of, oh gosh, I want, what if this were more resonant, or what if they used a different mallet? And oh my gosh, I was trying so hard to ignore all of that, but I couldn't help but think, what if I was in a sound bath or a similar situation, maybe one of your gong meditation sessions and sound workshops, where a percussionist is actually, playing these instruments. How would that experience be different for me? So I'm curious if you can just kind of explain what you do, if that's possible, in a gong meditation session.
Sure. Well, it's really not that much different than what I do playing a concert. It's kind of refined itself over the years that way. When I first started out, it was all big gongs and lots of noise and kind of like an hour of endless sound. And I got tired of that pretty quickly, because it's like, well, it's got to be more than this. So I started adding other items to my setup. And now I bring about 50 different percussion items when I do a session, from like 3-inch rin bowls up to 32-inch gongs. I'll bring all kinds of stuff, shakers and rattles and handbells and all kinds of things. And I like to leave a lot of space in between the sounds, as I said before, as opposed to just a continuous wall of sound. So I'll play and, let the sounds kind of fade away before I play another sound. And two other aspects that come from my percussive training is I'm always counting. So there's always some sort of rhythm behind what I'm doing. It might be at some sort of a meta rhythm, some really huge rhythm cycle, that could be minutes long or something, or it could be just as much as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and, So I'm always counting at different levels. I want my stuff to be sort of rhythmic in that way, and that helps with pacing things. So I'm not just randomly hitting something like, oh, I think I'll hit this gong now. And I watch videos of people, and that's what it really looks like they're doing. So everything I do is, there's thought behind it. And the other aspect that I do a lot of melodic things. I've got a big set of rin and singing bowls that I put together into a melodic set. The Burma bells, I've got copper-clad bells, things like that I've made it, picked them up and formed melodic sets. So I play little melodies throughout my session, and I might go back to those melodies later. So when I play it's just kind of one big musical piece. Mm-hmm. And I try to make it more that way because I think it's to me, it just makes more sense.
Yeah. Do you get questions about that a lot from people who participate in your workshops?
Yeah, I do, because what I do is a lot different than most other people. So if they've been to somebody else's session, then they'll have questions about, well, why do you do this? Or why do you have so much stuff? Yeah. That's a big one. And it's like, well, I've been collecting instruments for 40 years. So, I mean, I've got a lot of stuff. I've got over 80 gongs right now. It's just like, I didn't just get everything in a week. It's like,
Right.
Just like you guys know. I mean, you're a percussionist. You buy stuff all the time, little things, big things. And pretty soon you've got like boxes and boxes full of percussion instruments. So I use a lot because I have a lot. And then that's just the vision I have of, like I said, playing melodies and rhythms and just trying to make it more of a musical experience than just, okay, I'm just bashing on some big gongs and playing some swells.
Yeah. What is the craziest story of acquiring an instrument that you have?
Craziest, geez.
Or just, maybe not craziest, but
people give me
place or
I've found stuff in weird places, or I just have people give me stuff because I think you could use this, and so they give me a gong or a bell or something, because they know I'm into stuff.
Yeah.
But I find a lot of stuff, like on eBay and all, and I buy all the weird stuff that nobody wants. Like I have sort of a historic, and it wasn't $2 million, but I have a set of crotales made for, I think his name was John Stossard. He was the percussionist in the Boston Symphony. And these were made for him in 1949. And they're handmade crotales. And they're for Debussy's Prelude to an Afternoon of the Faun. It's a set of those, and they're on handles. And there's actually 2 pair of them. And I've got a letter, provenance and all this, and in this nice handmade case. I found them on eBay, and I bought them just because I didn't want some rock guy to buy them and ruin them, because these are really kind of historical. I got them for like $40 or something.
Did they sound different from crotales we know?
No, they sound the same. Here, you want to hear them?
Yeah.
They're kind of cool because they screw on these handles.
Yeah.
And there's an obvious thickness difference here where modern crotales aren't that different. But let me find a mallet here.
Good job, man.
Just having them sitting.
Yeah, we'll have to have you both hold them up, and I'll screenshot.
Here we go. Yeah. This one. So it's like I bought these purely because I wanted to save them from something, from somebody wrecking them because they didn't know what they were. And
it's just probably the 2 pitches, right?
Just the 2 pitches, which is E and what is the other one? E and B. And those are the 2 you need for the Debussy piece.
I played that when I was a student, and I hit our set of crotales, and my conductor said, it sounds good, but they are out of tune. And I said, I was 19 or something, and I said, shoot, I do not know how to fix that.
Yes, they are crotales.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'll probably give these to the PS Museum when I'm done with them, because cool. I think that'd be a cool place for them. Because I've been trying to find out who made them, but I was going to ask Vic Firth. And then he got ill and died before I could ask him. So I don't know. I got to find somebody, maybe at Zildjian, who could have an idea.
It reminds me of like the Emil Richards had that crazy story he shared with us about walking into like some sort of like flower shop basically, and they had a big tree sitting in like this gigantic singing bowl. And he got it for like $50 or something like that.
Yeah, we wanted to hear a story of how you ripped somebody off or something. That's what we were hoping for. Yeah. I try to steal a gong once a week or so.
For a couple crotales is pretty good.
Well, yeah, for 4 of them that are like 70 years old, not bad.
Do you have any thoughts about the low crotale for? Is it? I think it's a low A and B for Rain Tree.
It's hard to get those low pitches. Yeah. Sabian made some big. They made like a prototype set of really custom order crotales. Yeah, there's a guy in Russia who makes bass crotales that I want to get a couple from. Elgovsky Percussion in Moscow. I've got one of his bell plates, which is really nice. But he makes bass crotales, and looking to get, like 2 or 3 of those. Just the main notes I use.
What do you got there, Laurel?
Yeah. Well, I was just, I've never had a sound bath or anything, but I do find like large bells and singing gongs really quite soothing, and they can be very calming. And speaking of people hoping that they don't damage these beautiful instruments when we see them, I went to a yoga class on a Saturday morning, and the teacher had like 4 giant singing bowls in front of her. And I was so excited because I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I've never been to a class that used these. It's fantastic. And we start and everybody's on their backs. And she said, all right, I will, sound the bowls to begin the class. And so I was just laying there with my eyes closed, like, this is going to be great. And then she just like, whong.
Exactly.
Oh, just smack.
Exactly my experience.
Smacks the side, and I would just open my eyes, and I was like, ugh.
Well, like every time I see that, I want to be like, hey, can I do the bowls? Like when it's time for that.
I know. I was just like, God, no, really?
But your meridians are realigned now, Laurel.
Yeah, your nervous
Yeah,
system is
so
totally.
much time developing this touch, and it takes so much time and experimentation to know an instrument, and then of course as percussionists, it takes so much time, and it's not fair for people to just think they could just hit something and it's okay.
Exactly.
The plus side, Megan, though, is when the outdoor club collaborates through their hand drum thing with the percussion studio. This happened at Utah State. We had this it was fun, collaborative thing, but the outdoor recreation club had a drum circle. It's like anyone joined the drum circle, and we were supposed to help them with this gig, basically. And it was a call and response thing, and they were just blown away when we could play their rhythms. They went, gutta, geek, geek, it up, and we played it back, and they were just like, what? How did you just do that? How did you, that's funny.
No, and that's the thing in my own way, I'm trying to counteract, with the blog and things like that. It's like, hey, people, you need some training,
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you can buy a gong or a singing bowl or something, but there's a lot of different ways to play it, and there's ways to, get all the subtle sounds and all that. You just don't whack it. So,
Yeah. Well, I think let's give Michael a little rest. And Laurel, is that baby quiet for the moment? Do you want to do your little announcements?
Yeah, he's quiet right now. I can give it a go.
Let's give it a go. And I guess I'll say to our listeners, the last, 5 or so episodes, if you've ever heard a baby in the background, Laurel's rocking the baby.
Could have been that or Megan's cat.
It could have been Megan's cat. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Plural.
So today, really quickly, if he stays asleep, I thought I would announce to everyone the PAS committee openings and how to apply if you want to serve on one of these committees. So the application cycle closes May 31st. So by the time this comes out, you should have about a month, I think, to get things together. And if you're interested in committee service and want to view how they're structured and operate, you can look at the committee chair's handbook on the PAS website. So if you're interested in doing this, anyone who would like to apply, you just electronically submit a letter of interest and your resume or CV to the appropriate committee chair. And I'll go through those in just a second. And again, that's until May 31st. And they say you're encouraged to list particular areas in which you're interested in contributing to that committee's activity. So here are the openings, and there are quite a number of committees just at all. And I highly suggest if something you're interested in has an opening, you can check out the list of the personnel on the committee, of everyone on the website. And if you know somebody, I would just message them and ask, hey, so what is this about? Because something that they were all charged to do in really the last few months is to come up with exactly what the committee is responsible for, not just about PASIC, but just in general in the field of percussion, like what's the mission of each committee. So you should be able to get a pretty clear answer about that. But here's some openings. Health and Wellness has 5, and that's Brad Meyer is the chair. The Interactive Drumming Committee, so this is the drum circle type of public health engagement committee. That's 4 openings, and John Fitzgerald is the chair. Pedagogy has 2, and that's Jason Baker. Composition has 2, that's Nicholas Myers. Marching Percussion, 4 openings. You can get in touch with Mark Riley. The International Committee has 2 openings, and Daniel Tones is the contact person there. The New Music Committee has 1 opening, and Bill Solik is the one you want to get in touch with there. If you're into scholarly research, they have 1 opening, and Molly Siderman Weber is who you need to get in touch with. Education has 1. Pete DeSalvo is the chair. Music Technology has 2. Brady Harrison is the chair. The University Committee has 6, and I think that's the most of anyone. And Jennifer Hotz, H-O-T-Z, is the chair there. Keyboard has 3 openings. You can get in touch with Scott Herring. And Drum Set has 2. You can get in touch with Eric Hughes about that. So again, if you would like to serve on a committee, I would get to the website, check out what they do as much as you can, and then just write a letter, get your CV, and you just email it to the chair. And if they think you'd be a good fit, you'll get a phone interview over the summer, probably sometime in June, and then they make the official decisions in mid-July, and that's it. Then you're on a committee, and you get to go to meetings and write articles and stuff. It's good fun.
I was just going to tack on, if you want to be on a committee, I really hope you apply, because there's, of course, a lot of people out there that are, maybe they just apply because they need it on their tenure line or something. People like Ben. Ben will do that for tenure, but I don't know if he really wants to. Ben, what committee are you on? Aren't you on something?
I applied for the percussion ensemble one because I'm like super into that, and I thought I had a lot to offer, but I didn't get on it.
Oh, no tenure.
But I'll apply again.
Yeah, no, it's neat. If you're interested, it's I hope you apply. Yeah, cool. Thanks so much, Laurel.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, sure. I would just add that it's a fun way to meet different people that you might not come into contact with in your circle. Mm-hmm. In your little percussion circle. I've enjoyed that about the Health and Wellness Committee.
Yeah. Megan, do you want to go into your topic?
Sure, I'd love to. So I figured, since we have Michael on today, and we're talking about gongs and metallic sounds, I have been kind of pondering the question, or have been asked the question, of why there are a lot of African instruments that have a buzzing sound along with them, a buzzing component attached to them in some way. And we've been studying, you guys have probably heard me talk about this on the podcast before, but we've been studying a lot of music from the African continent here at Mizzou over the past few years, and bringing in a lot of artists, and have been trying to do a lot of outreach through the state of Missouri to introduce people to traditional music from the continent, and partially to promote artists that are coming in and promote their concerts and interest in their music and their culture. And the question I always get first, not always first, but I always get, is what makes that buzzing sound? What is that, and why? Is it broken? And we just had Bernard Woma here, who's a master geol player from Ghana, and he did a lot of outreach presentations, and same thing. Everyone's asking, what is that buzzing noise? And I love the way that he described it. He said that it's a soothing sound to Africans, and it's kind of a healing sound. And so I love that he explained to percussionists, Western percussionists, I guess, of when you hear this buzzing sound, it means your marimba is broken. And he said, when we don't hear that buzzing sound, it means our instrument is broken. I thought that was so cool. So I guess I'm the most familiar of this buzz through Bernard and the geol, which is found in Dagara music in northwest Ghana, and also through Shona music on the Mbira. If you have all heard of Mbira before, when we talk to patients, Munjeri, for example, you notice that there are bottle caps or a little metallic ring that's attached to a metal plate on the Mbira. So when you play, the vibration of the sound causes these things to vibrate. And again, when asking patients why, she said it's used in healing ceremonies, and that buzzing sound is used to directly communicate with their ancestors. It's an integral part of the instrument and the healing properties of it. So I did a little bit more research, and I found this blog from Wesleyan University. It seemed like it was created for a class called African Presences 1, and it's for kind of a class project on different subjects of African music. And the author of this one is Cameron Rowland, and he brought up a couple of interesting things. So first of all, this is similar to what I just said, but in a different culture. This is the Mande culture, and it's talking about lutes. And he says that the culture leans heavily on the African tradition of buzzing, rattling, and jingling in an effort to create the fullest sound possible. So suggesting that maybe it's part of the sound aesthetic also. And he says that most lutes have a removable buzzing or jingling device made of a flexible metal plaque with small metal rings attached to it, which is inserted into a slit in the far end of the neck. This kind of device is consistent with a widespread African practice rooted in an aesthetic that values a buzzing or jingling sound which frames the particular sound of the instrument. So without those buzzing or jingling devices, the sound is pure. So if you take off the gourds off of a geel and took off the paper or the spiderweb casing that creates that buzzing sound, it would be, it's rose. They're using rosewood. It's a different kind of rosewood than what we use, but it is an African rosewood, and the instrument sounds wonderful and pure sound. And so when you add that buzzing, it's definitely intentional. Then there's also an article from the New York Times back in 2005 that brings up a different part, an interesting point. The article is about a new sound that has been introduced into the phonetic language. It's described as the sound, a buzzing sometimes capped by a faint pop, is present in more than 70 African languages. It is produced by the lower lip moving back and forward, flapping on the inside of the upper teeth. So the author of the Wesleyan blog was saying that, maybe we can take a cue from this article and look at the surrounding sonic environment of this culture. And if that is a sound that we're used to and is soothing and is common, maybe that's also where it comes from. Wow. And something that might be a little more abstract is, well, first of all, with the languages, that type of sound is an integral part of 70 languages on the continent. So maybe that does make sense. Something that's a little more abstract might be the sound of a fly, the tsetse fly, which it's determining vegetation, settlement, and ultimately types of civilization throughout West Africa. So sounds of insects, sounds of languages might have led to possibly this buzzing aesthetic in many African instruments. So, Michael, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on this or any experience with African instruments also, or maybe something parallel in cultures where these gongs originate from, maybe in East Asia, if there's anything parallel you can think of.
I can't think of any real parallel, with the metal sounds, but yeah, a lot of the African instruments do have buzzes or rattles, extra sounds to it. And when I'm playing drums, a lot of times I'll hang things off my drums or on top of the drum heads, to get those extra sounds like tambourine jingles or bells or, like strings of little bells and things like that. So when you hit the drum, you get these other sounds. So it's just not the pure drum sound.
Right.
And I think it does add another dimension to what you do.
Right. Something I was thinking that might be parallel would be in gamelan music, the ombak sound, where the instruments are tuned just ever so slightly apart from each other, and it creates that beating sound.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whereas to us, or in Western music, that would be out of tune.
Right. And that's one thing I like is having, because I'm not playing with my setup. I'm not playing, with an orchestra. I'm not playing with other tuned instruments most of the time. So a lot of my stuff is slightly out of tune with each other, but I get all these fantastic beats and other sort of effects happening because the instruments are, kind of pushing against each other.
Right.
And I find that attractive, in the music.
Hmm.
Megan, I wonder if a parallel would be Eastern languages pitch inflection. I was looking at the gliss gongs behind you, the opera gongs and glissing. I don't know. Maybe
Good
that would be
point. Yeah.
I mean, that's totally me speaking out of turn with no, not a lot of knowledge in this, but that might be a phonetic parallel.
I also
True.
just like a super nerdy Western observation that I've had is when you look at Malatek marimbas, which Lee Howard Stevens, of course, pushes as having round resonators, they sound very in tune and they have a very sort of pure sound to them that I think other instruments don't have. For example, Yamaha marimbas don't have that sort of crystal clear sound that I think works very well for Bach. But at the same rate, when you get into the low range of Yamaha marimba, I think it does have a distinctive color that the Malatek instruments don't have so much, that works very well for the Japanese repertoire because it's more about the projection rather than the perfect crystal clear round sound that Malatek instruments have. So I don't know, it's like, again, my sort of take on it. I think that
Ben, why are you such an instigator? We're having such a nice talk about languages, and then you got to bring it around to marimba fighting again.
But I think that's something you can look at, and I know that like clarinets also, there's like the German fingering system and the French fingering system, and don't quote me on which is which, but I think that the Germans developed a fingering system that was actually like more in tune, but the German players were accustomed to the sort of out of tune sound of the old ones, so the German people actually don't use the German system, and I don't know, something like that. But yeah, I think that out of tuneness can have a certain character to it. Like Megan said, the Ombach, the gamelan sort of wavering sound has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool. That's great, Megan. Thanks for that. That's very cool.
Yeah, of course.
Well, let's see. How about...
Real quick, one more thing.
Yeah.
Michael was talking about like putting things on drums or drum sets to get different sounds. And there's a drummer whose name I can't remember right now, but he played on David Bowie's final album. Does anyone know who I'm talking about?
Mark Giuliani.
Yeah, Mark Giuliani. Yeah. And he talks about there are a lot of sort of effects that you hear, like a gated snare drum sound, that he's interested in reproducing acoustically. So for that sort of gated snare drum sound, he'll actually cut out like the center of one drum head and put it on top of a snare drum, and it gives that sort of psh, like the gated sound that we're used to. And he's also known for putting like tiny little cymbals and tambourines and things like that on his drums to get different characteristic sounds.
Yeah, very cool. Michael, I was going to ask, I have a student who started a gong meditation session here in our practice space, and I think it started with a finals week and people being stressed out, and he's just interested in this, and so we checked him out of the room, and he's continued it for a couple semesters now. I was going to ask how, I don't know, do you have any advice for someone who's interested in getting into this and starting a business or doing sessions? And you already said it's good to have training. It's good to be an actual musician for this. Anything from maybe just the business side?
Oh, from the business side, well, it's really not much different than being in a band and trying to book gigs and make all that stuff happen. I mean, for me, it's the same thing as if I had a band, except it's just me. And you call on places and you say, hey, it's really great. You call a place up and say, hey, I play gongs. And they go, what? Because most people think of John Bonham or Pink Floyd or something, with a gong. And they're like, no, it's not like a rock band. I play gongs, and people meditate and lay down and really enjoy it. So it's, it's just like calling up a bar and you try to book your band. Well, you call up a yoga studio or a spiritual bookstore or someplace like that, and give them the talk, and hopefully they kind of go, okay, we'll try this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Wait, we have a nice question from Facebook. Mike Newmeyer says, Michael, how does Gongtopia tie in with meditation, and does it possibly overlap into music therapy? We've certainly talked about meditation already, but I guess we didn't mention music therapy at all.
Yeah, I mean, therapy, oh boy, that's a whole wormhole of stuff there. Because I mean, there are people who are actual musical therapists. They go to college, they get a degree, they study that. That's a whole different side. So when I do this, I mean, I'm not a trained therapist. I'm not a trained medical person at all. So that's not the thrust of what I'm doing. And I don't talk about, the therapy side of things. What I do, I'm offering these really cool sounds that are very relaxing, and you can meditate or you can fall asleep. A lot of people fall asleep and then just wake up and say, hey, that was a great sleep. And, what the result that happens is really up to the listener. Mm. Like I tell people, I just drive the bus. I'm just making the sounds. And if you really get something deep out and profound out of it, that's great. And if you just get a real good sleep and you're relaxed, that's great also. So I don't do any claims of like therapy. I know a lot of other people do, and a lot of people call it gong therapy or something like that. But I try to avoid that because I'm not a therapist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Do people ever get critical? Do they say, "Oh, I was so in it," and then you hit the Burma bell, and I don't know. Next time, could you please not hit those or something?
Well, I get people who, because I improvise each session to a great degree, although there's certain things that I do most every time, but people who've been to multiple sessions, they'll go, "Oh, you didn't do that sound today," and I'm going, "Well, I'm sorry," Right. Like I do the friction mallets and the gongs sometimes and get like the whale sound. So one time somebody came up afterwards and she said, "You didn't do the whales today." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry." So it's more something like that. I haven't really had anybody, complain about a sound. Because again, I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. It's not random, and I'm just not hitting things. Mm-hmm. So I try to make some sort of sense out of it for myself and for the listeners.
I was going to ask, as far as gong's use in composition, do you have any favorites? Favorite examples? I played some great, delicate, deep gong hits at the end of we did a big Mahler piece recently here, and they're just beautiful gongs at the end. I don't know, do you have any favorites you like to?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, maybe any composers that utilize tam-tam really well, or?
I mean, I have so many gong recordings, it's hard to pick anything out of. There's just a lot of great use in contemporary stuff.
Yeah.
Where they're using gongs more, which is fun, and more not just as effects, but as integral parts. Because it used to be just like, just a big crash, and that was the gong thing. Of course, microphony. I mean, I remember when first time I saw that performed was at a PASIC ages ago, and it just blew me away. I mean, I think it was Krumata did it. Oh, cool. And it was just like, I was just totally blown away. It's like, wow, now that's a way to use a gong, very different. Yeah. There's just a lot of new things coming out that I've really liked. There's a new one. William Winnant from San Francisco's on a new one. It's just 4 gongs. I think it's one Thai gong and 3, larger gongs. And I can't remember the composer, but if you look up William Winnant on the internet, you can find it. It's something like New Moon, Quiet Moon, something like that. And it's this whole composition, and it's like, I think it's 5 sections, and it's just these 4 gongs. And it's very slow moving and dark and a lot of space, and it's really fantastic, very meditative in a way.
Arvo Part's gong use came to mind when you just said that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's like almost you don't notice it, and then it's just sorry, Ben.
If I could share one of my favorites, I actually discovered when I was at Miami. Svet taught me this. The sound we're always taught with like a tam tam to don't strike the tam tam in the center. You're supposed to strike it off center so you don't crack it or anything like that. And when I was playing the Bartok Sonata for 2 pianos and percussion, my friend Carly was playing the gong, and he told Carly, strike the gong very softly but like firmly dead in the center of the gong.
Oh yeah.
And that sound, it's more like what we would call like a gong sound than a tam tam sound. It almost has a pitch to it. But the gong paired with like low, profound piano, I think is just one of the coolest sounds ever.
That's way cool. I know exactly the moment.
Yeah, the gong and the piano turn into one instrument where it's not gong and piano. It's like piano colored by gong, gong colored by piano. It's kind of hard to say. But the Bartok, and then, of course, also the Krum Music for a Summer Evening is another one that uses, I think, gong in the context of piano very well. It's the gong and piano, just like they have such an eerily tied together sound, I think, in both those works, that it works super well.
That was the concert we did here, Ben, with those two pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, this is just silly, but Michael, I'm wondering, I see your sponsors on your website and that, you use Paiste cymbals, gongs, and sounds. And I'm wondering if in any way you feel limited by working with one company, because there are, cymbal sounds and gong sounds are so different depending on the maker and the origination of them. And I'm wondering if you feel limited by working with one.
Well, I mean, I work with gongs. I've got gongs from all over the world, and all kinds of Asian and European gongs and that. Paiste's the main gongs that I use, but I mean they're cool. They realize, I mean, they make one style of gong basically, and they do it very well. But you can buy a Thai gong or a Vietnamese gong or something, and that's a very different sound. So. I'm not limited in that respect where I can only play Paiste gongs. Mm-hmm. Those are the main ones I use, and the main cymbals, and I've got all kinds of Paiste, effects and that, and those are great, and I love them. But I do have a lot of different gongs, and just the fact that I'm a collector, I just collect all this stuff, and you can't but help it. But no, I have no problem, and they haven't had a problem with me using other stuff.
I'm sure.
But it's the main gongs I always use and feature are theirs. So
it reminds me of like Vic Firth. Obviously, has quite a few very well produced videos of percussionists, but some of the Vic Firth videos don't have any of their products in them. Like if someone records core. And some of them have sort of homemade sticks and things in that. So I think the idea is just that if Paiste makes a gong that you can use, you use it, but you can also certainly use out-of-the-box things.
Right, yeah. Like when I was in Australia, Paiste supplied the gongs for me, so I didn't have to fly stuff down there, and I just used all their stuff.
We should talk about this more. I feel like students ask that a lot. They ask about sponsorships, and everyone here talking right now is familiar with kind of how it works, and I think that's
trying to push his mallets right now.
I am. Yeah, let's sell those mallets. They sound great on
really?
gong.
Really? I just wrote a blog on that, so you can read about it.
Cool. Yeah. I would say the same thing. The sponsors, if you find something else that works really well, it's fairly common that they're laid back about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, because percussion is so many things, and a lot of times you end up using rental instruments, or like I'm sure, I don't know, whatever, mallet instruments any of you endorse, sometimes you're someplace else and you got to use somebody else's marimba than what you endorse. Right. I mean, companies understand that,
Sure.
It's, but you endeavor to play the products that you endorse because, for one, you really like them. I love Paiste stuff. I've been playing it for 40 years, and it's like, I love it, so I use it all the time. But, yeah, endorsements, you could really go into, like, a big, long show on that.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. Maybe we should sometime, because, students definitely ask a lot. Megan, I think you've got a final question there.
Yeah, we're just wondering, your 63 CDs, you've got a new one coming out. Can you tell us about the newest one and why you're excited about it?
I'd love to. Well, it's been in the makings for quite a few years. It was supposed to be released by one record company, and then that fell through, and finally we took it over. It's a gongs and percussion duet with a shakuhachi player. And the player is Brian Ritchie, who happens to be the bass player for Violent Femmes, the rock band. Cool. He's actually a shakuhachi master player. He's been studying and playing it for years. And he used to live here in Milwaukee, and we got together and we'd play. And, we've done this recording. We actually have 2 albums ready to go. One is all jazz. And the other one, the first one, is mostly improvisation. It's, we just got together and played, and there's a couple of his tunes, and it's really great. It's fun to play together. It's kind of a natural thing. The flutes and percussion go together well, but especially the bamboo shakuhachi. And we're going to be playing at the, World Flute Congress, I think it is, which is kind of like the PASIC for flute players.
Right.
He's been invited, so we're going to be playing a duo concert at that in August, which should be fun. Yeah.
NFA, right?
Yeah, and hopefully to do a short tour around that too. He lives in Australia now, so it's kind of, we don't get together as often as we'd like.
Where is the conference? Maybe one
conference
of us
is it's in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, on the Mississippi River, just south of Minneapolis a ways.
Well, let me know if you feel like going as far south as Missouri. Maybe we can set something up for you.
I'm always up for traveling. Let me know.
Cool. Yeah.
And Megan's already got all the gongs. She's got.
They're not Peisty though. Sorry, but sounds like it'll be okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Have gongs.
Megan, we have a lot of gongs. They're just not nearly as organized as yours.
Well, there's some missing from that wall, but that's because they're being used in a recital this afternoon. But yeah, this wall, I'm pretty proud of that.
I'm way impressed. That's a good looking wall.
We had to use, what do you call them? When you have to put something into the wall that like really fortifies it if you're hanging something
anchor.
heavy.
Sure.
What is it?
A wall anchor?
Yes, we had to put anchors in there.
Yeah, ours kind of looks like, if you've ever seen just like a polka dotted magic eye thing, that's our gong wall. It looks like that.
Well, look at Michael's gong wall. Oh my gosh, he beats all of us.
It's great.
Yeah.
Very cool. Man, Michael Bettine, thanks so much. It's great to meet you, and it's been so fun getting to know your work and getting to know your posts and just all the great stuff that this is the coolest thing about this podcast to me is we think we know everybody, but we definitely don't. There's so many great, interesting people out there.
I love that.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I've been a long-time listener. I love your podcast, and I've come across so many people I didn't know about, from your podcast, and gotten a lot of great ideas, so.
Wow, thank you.
142. I'm glad you're keeping at it.
We're at it. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Hey, well, great. Laurel, Megan, Ben, thank you guys as always. And yeah, Michael Bettine, we will catch you guys at 1:43.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.